So we start today with a real privilege. Margaret Vestager is a pioneer of today's anti-monopoly movement. Starting almost 10 years ago, she was the first to take on the corporations then known in Europe as the GAFA. When she did, she elicited howls of protest, not only from these giants, but also from the U.S. government, which at that time viewed its job as making the world safe for big tech. But as head of DG Comp, Vice President Vestager pushed bravely forward, doing right by the citizens of Europe, and frankly, doing right by the citizens of the United States, who had yet to learn how to hire a president strong enough to fight to protect our democracy. Those were often lonely years for our European allies, and they deserve our true gratitude for standing tall. Over the last half-decade, Vice President Vestager doubled down on this work. She helped the European Parliament pass strong new laws, helped Europeans strengthen their defenses against foreign industrial and military aggression, and worked in true partnership with many agencies and departments in the Biden administration. Vice President Vestager has spoken many times in the United States, but this is the first time she has come to address the broad public. Originally, the Vice President was supposed to be with us in person, but unfortunately other political contingencies have gotten in the way. Folks, please join me in welcoming Executive Vice President Vestager.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, I'm touched by your kind words to me, but even more by how strongly you describe the situation that we're in, that we need to use the tools we have so that they can enable our democracy, because it is at threat. If you have a historical interest, I have one, and maybe not surprising, in particular in the history of the European Union. And at least here in Europe, few people know why we have strong rules for competition to be the name of the marketplace. And it goes all the way back to the very creation, the very first initiatives taken to create the union that we have today. Jean Monnet speaks about it in his memoir. And it goes back to May 1950. It's a couple of days before the Schuman Declaration, which sort of sets off the coal and steel community. And Schuman informs the US Secretary of State, Dean Acheson. So he wants to give him heads up about the project that he is to launch about this European coal and steel community. He needs support from the US to make this happen. But Acheson, he's a lawyer. And with the notion of European community, he fears the end of commercial freedom. What he hears is the creation of a coal and steel cartel. Of course, the purpose was not to create a cartel. The goal was to integrate European industries into one large but free common market. So how to reassure US partners and make sure that there was support for this incredibly important European step forward? Well, simple, to include rules against monopolization and cartels in the treaty, directly inspired by the Schuman Act. And that is how European competition policy came to life. And I mention this because it has taught me at least two things. The first one is that there is a shared goal between US and European competition rules. And the second, that competition policy was always meant to be a means of convergence between the US and European economies. And the thing is that it's really striking to see how modern and how necessary these two aspects remain. And I will speak about both of them. At its core, competition policy is a democratic tool. There are two ways, I think, to think about competition. There's a technical view that competition keeps prices low. It pushes companies to improve their product quality, offer better services, expand consumer choice, and innovate. It's about efficient resource allocation, and that, of course, is important. There is another view as well, a broader view. Competition policy is about keeping markets contestable for anyone to have a fair chance, about allowing all players to compete, about preventing the abuse of market power. It's simply about fairness in society. Because competition empowers consumers. It creates a culture of choice, of you having to make up your mind, because the culture is a culture of choice. And it preserves the very existence of choice in the marketplace. Our court has recognized that competition rules must be used to protect consumer interests. And that means to promote conduct that are not just consistent with competition on the merits, but, and I quote, also necessary in order to ensure plurality in a democratic society. Our courts underline this. And many of our interventions in digital markets, they're precisely about that. We fought to allow consumers to retain a choice about their preferred search engine in the Google Android case, to access fair rankings when it came to Google Shopping. We took measures to prevent competitors from being foreclosed, being kept out of the market when it came to Microsoft LinkedIn, Google Fitbit, Meta Customer, or mergers. In doing so, we kept with the fundamental objective of antitrust rules to preserve a diverse marketplace. And there was a fundamental political idea behind US antitrust law, and that was the same idea. It was the fear that the concentration of market power may cause an inherent threat to democracy. And that might lead to a totalitarian regime. It hurts to admit it, but this concern has rarely been more acute than it is today. Competition policy advances, in my opinion, democracy in so many ways. Competition allows equal opportunities to compete. It lowers, by lowering barriers to entry, it favors plurality. And competition also democratizes the relationship between worker and the companies that they work for. Competition touches upon our most fundamental values. The idea of an individual having the freedom to pursue hers or his own destiny. The idea of fair play. Freedom to compete. Freedom to enable plurality. That plays a very big role in the markets at the intersection of knowledge and government. For instance, in the news media. These markets have changed dramatically. Today's news and information are largely brought to us by digital platforms. And one of the great challenges of our times is that we receive fragmented information. Information that is made to fit each of our little spaces, each in our own little social media fit, without contradiction, without the fact-finding that we have used to cherish in media that brought us the omnibus approach. The risk is to think that the world is just as small and just as simple as what is being brought to you online. And even though we know that it's not the case, the temptation to accept that simplistic tunnel vision is very, very big. So what we see is that we know that we are being turned away from plurality of opinions. And that is exactly what democracy is about. based on the facts with contradiction, that we pose our views out in open space. And the fight against that risk is really central to our efforts to develop a European way of digitization. Beyond competition, across all digital policies, we want to ensure trust, humanity, and fairness. What we do, and we're in the process, we're not done yet, is to think about transparency, contestability, and of course, non-discrimination by empowering all users to exercise choice, to control their own data, and by preventing harmful conduct. The Digital Services Act seeks to protect us against illegal content, while at the same time protecting our freedom of speech. Absolutely essential. The Artificial Intelligence Act aims to protect democracy online, banning uses of AI that go against our fundamental rights, our fundamental values, like social scoring or manipulation with a vulnerable audience. So competition law enforcement is part of a wider effort. We're rolling out a consistent cross-policy effort to tackle disinformation, polarization. These are fundamental threats to our democracy. We take great comfort that we're not alone in this fight. These are values that Europe and the United States have always shared. And this is why, more than ever, we need to work together when it comes to protecting competition, to have the effects of democracy that it enables. The industries that we are concerned with here, well, we see the same concerns in other jurisdictions. We are not alone in what we do. We are all concerned by the market powers accrued by the same companies that often act as gatekeepers. They decide who should be successful. And that means that efficient enforcement will depend more and more and more on the quality of our cooperation. Given different legal systems, different traditions, full procedural alignment will never be possible. But through dialogue, I think we can achieve a very high level of convergence. I should say that the level of cooperation between our teams has probably never been better. It's excellent. And I really want to thank my colleagues, Lina Khan and Jonathan Cantor, for enabling this. In addition, the work that we have done with Secretary Blinken, Secretary Raimondo, Trade Representative Tai in the Trade and Technology Council adds to this. And this work has helped us coordinate our strategies, find common ground. It has managed to produce real, tangible results, in particular when it comes to our technology cooperation. And it has played as a stabilizing factor, because of course, even between the best of partners, sometimes there is a risk of derailing. But we know how to deal also with those risks these days. And this is why I'm so encouraged to see the attention of US enforcers, US policymakers, that attention paid to the problem of gatekeeper power in a digital economy. Lina Khan recently spoke of the fear small businesses often feel when they trade on big tech platforms. I can recognize that 100%. She also spoke about the growing bipartisan support for more action on platforms. And that is what you have seen in Europe, a broad political will for society actually to make sure that tech serves humans. I'm also inspired by the cross-sectoral approach America is now taking to protect competition. The 2021 executive order was like Christmas Eve for someone like me. If we want to change the game on market concentration, we need to reach across government to promote rules and to prevent abusive behavior. And this is what I see, and I am grateful for that leadership. Can we cooperate even more? I believe that we should pursue convergence on 3 levels, and this will be my conclusion. The first level focuses on wider strategic cooperation. This means continuing and deepening the forums that we have recently established, such as the Joint Technology Competition Policy Dialogue. The second level is to seek alignment on principles. The platform economy is a very good example. When we talk about gatekeepers, we need to prevent digital platforms from choking out competition. Well, when we speak the same language, regardless of how it translates into law, we can be effective. When we tackle the mistreatment of companies and individuals that depend on platforms for market access, they depend on platforms to go on with their lives, with the businesses. We pursue the same goal. And the final level is, of course, close cooperation. We have a track record of close cooperation. Of course, we have always remained independent enforcers. But when you look at the cases where we diverge in our assessment, it's usually either explained by difference in facts on ground or by the law, because our core vision for competition enforcement and its objective, they remains broadly aligned. So we have to continue and we have to nurture our relationship. As we do this, and if there is a grey day, for me, it's great to remember why this matters so much. As competition enforcers, we are guardians of fundamental values: liberty, choice, pluralism. And those are the threads that weaves the fabric of democracy. We need to continue this work because right now the stakes are incredibly high. We are not just concerned with the concentration of market power. We are concerned that this power is in the hands of online platforms. Platforms that has gained a huge space in our lives. The number of hours we as individuals use. It controls how we get our news, how we share it, how we interact with one another, and those are the core behaviors in every democracy. The ties that we built across the Atlantic, they serve a common purpose: to restore competition, to empower companies and consumers, to set the guardrails against disinformation and impediment to plurality. We have built so far-reaching tools. We owe it to our citizens to show and to use them with purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to, I guess you didn't stick around for the second round of applause. But that was actually a pretty good speech. It was kind of a sobering speech. It's, I don't know if the Vice President has ever actually spoken in quite those terms about the threat that we face to our democracy and the threats that we face to our society that we have built, our ability to communicate with one another. I was going to ask her, if I had a moment, if we hadn't been running behind, whether, what her plans were for the next stage in her life, because I really hope that she remains in this fight. So I'm going to turn this over to Courtney, who is going to run our first panel of the day, and Courtney will introduce the panelists. Thank you all.